Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much, Bobby, for that very warm and kind introduction. May I just start by acknowledging and welcoming the presence of Deputies Owen Kenny and Catherine Connolly, two people who share a very deep commitment to the work in development, particularly development education, and it's wonderful that you were able to join us here today for what is a really important opportunity. I'm really genuinely delighted to be here this afternoon. I'm also so delighted that President Higgins will receive the inaugural Global Voice for Humanity Award later, and I want to really pay tribute to his tireless support for the vital work to achieve a more equal and indeed just world. The theme of today's symposium, I believe, is both timely and relevant. In launching the Irish Aid GCE strategy in 2021, I then tarnished to Simon Coveney, a man who was my boss on at least 3, if not 4 occasions, so I better say nice things about him. But in that launch, in those remarks, he stressed that we face an uncertain global landscape. That was 2021. That global uncertainty is underlined even more clearly today. Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals has been set back by economic shocks, pandemic, conflict, and the existential threat of climate change. Something that hasn't been added to my speech is it's also been set back by political decision. And I think that's something that we all have to bear in mind. It is important, therefore, that today we are focused on the hard issues, including the drivers and impacts of climate change, efforts to undermine the multilateral system, disregard for international law and international humanitarian law, and indeed disinformation. These are among the greatest challenges of our time and are reflected in Irish Aid's work with our partners in policy terms and on the ground in Africa, in the occupied Palestinian territory, in Ukraine and elsewhere. Addressing these challenges, ladies and gentlemen, is a critical daily function of the government's work at the UN, within the EU, and through all our bilateral engagements. Your work across the scope of Ireland's formal education system and the increased reach with youth and adults through the life of the GCE strategy is a vital part of building understanding of how those values and systems universally are so important. Such understanding is vital in today's age of disinformation. A facts-based understanding of the complexities of the world and the drivers of inequality and injustice are critical tools for us all. Global citizenship education is designed to support questioning and dispel myths and negative stereotypes. It is becoming embedded in the curricula of our teacher training and across the education system. I see that every day because one thing that Bobby didn't mention is that I'm married to a national school teacher. My brother's a secondary school teacher, and I have 2 young children who are going through the education system. And I tell you, it's a lot easier to tell them what Dad does when you're talking about global development education, when you're talking about the fight for justice, when you're talking about climate change and those most vulnerable in the global south. It was certainly a lot easier explaining that to them than Brexit or the Platform Workers Directive. But this is where I am able to see the fruit of your work, not just in my professional and political work, but particularly in my personal life. And it's so reassuring to hear those comments coming from teacher and pupil alike. Ladies and gentlemen, examining and discussing these complex global issues can be daunting, but it can also foster values of equality and human rights, which can enable us all to become informed global citizens, able for active democratic participation and able to stand up for others to have this right too. Now is the time to reinforce messages of global solidarity. There have been shifts in the focus and quantity of overseas development aid from some major donors in recent times. The impact of these cutbacks poses something of an existential crisis for the development and humanitarian sectors. I want to assure you, however, that this government intends to fully remain true to our values and to our interests. We will maintain our ODA levels, and I will be negotiating strongly for annual increases towards the target of 0.7% of GNI. But in this environment, it is incumbent on every one of us implementing projects and programmes with Irish Aid funding to focus relentlessly on the impact and on reaching the furthest behind first. We need to demonstrate that impact with increased effectiveness across the whole Irish Aid programme. We've invested over €33.6 million in support to our GCE partners since the strategy was launched in 2021 by Simon. That commitment delivered by many partners here underpins the importance we have in supporting critical thinking and public awareness of these rapidly changing and interdependent issues. We need to bring that critical thinking to all of our work. Ladies and gentlemen, in the past 2 months, as Bobby has referred to, I have been very fortunate, and consider myself very fortunate, to have visited our programs in Kenya, Tanzania, Sierra Leone and Liberia. In July, I will be travelling to both Zambia and Zimbabwe as I then travel on to South Africa for a G20 meeting of ministers. I'm travelling to learn and to communicate our commitment and impact. I met students in Monrovia and discussed the importance of quality education and gender equality with them and their teachers. I met teachers in Sierra Leone, where Irish Aid works in partnership to provide professional development to teachers. Indeed, a highlight of the trip was meeting Sister Teresa McKeown from Mullingar, travelled to Sierra Leone in 1954 and has worked with disadvantaged children there since then. Now, Bobby alluded that I've been doing a lot of travelling. Just to reassure you, it hasn't been in the last couple of months. My family ties are quite clear. My late mother worked for Trogra for quite some time. I first was fortunate enough to engage in development work when I was 17 as part of a school project, and since then I have visited about 14 different countries in the global south, pretty much all of them in sub-Saharan Africa. I do not say it lightly when I have a lifelong passion and commitment to development work and development education, and I will continue to be relentless in that as a minister and indeed in any other public office I have held. Because across recent weeks and months, and indeed before that, I saw the importance of global solidarity and the contribution of our overseas development programme, working in partnership with local people and civil society organisations. They know the communities they are living and working in best. Working together, listening to and learning from local communities and making people-to-people connections is the critical foundation for building a better world, even in the face of the horrors being visited on the people of Gaza and indeed the people of Sudan. I think this is also applicable to how we can and do create more inclusive communities here. Bringing people together to learn, to become friends and form real connections. This can build trust and understanding, creating empathy which makes it harder for disinformation to take root. And I really do want to thank IDEA for organising not just this conference today, but I want to thank you all for the leadership and commitment you show every day in your work. I congratulate the GCE partners on the work done. I encourage your ever closer work with the education departments and teacher training institutions in their take-up of GCE approaches and complementary with the Education for Sustainable Development strategy. I also encourage your continued innovation for ever greater efficiency in delivering GCE tools to youths and adults. I hope that you come away from today with new practical thinking to deliver greater impact to GCE, and that you are emboldened to help our society engage productively with these challenges. And I think, just to conclude, a couple of little remarks to go off script. And I think they're really important to make. We're living in a really difficult age. I think we can all attest to that. And it doesn't matter if you're watching the news on television or you're listening to some of the comments on our streets, or God forbid some of the posts on social media, which show that there is levels of fear and hatred being put out deliberately, not just around the world, but here in Ireland. The political decisions others have made are absolutely retrograde, and I'm really, really saddened by them, personally and genuinely. But at those times when you worry about what sort of country we're becoming. Have we forgotten our own past? Our own past of famine, of poverty, of discrimination, of social imbalance, of forced emigration, of the reception that some of us, or indeed or those who went before us, didn't quite receive in other countries. And have we not learned from that? Are we going to be that open, tolerant country that we wished our aunts and uncles who took the boat were able to go to, or will it be something else? Are we going to be the country that, now that we are a prosperous and wealthy country, that takes our place amongst the nations of the world and delivers a positive message that's true to our values? That we don't just listen to the hot take on social media or in the media and make decisions with our funding that are absolutely retrograde. But we're clear, our values are here to stay. We have the position, we have the resources, we have the voice to try and influence our partners as greatly as possible. That's what we can do and what we will do. And every time it gets put back, or you hear or see something that makes you question where we're going as a people in this country, the best thing is you get to come into rooms like this. And more importantly, I get to go quite regularly to classrooms around the country. I get to meet school pupils, learners, teachers, principals who have dedicated their lives and are starting to dedicate their lives for true appreciation of the wider world. So I ask you, please, not just to continue your work, but to look to use your work and the work of IDEA to take it on to the next level, because that is how we win the race. That is how we win the battle. Thank you so much for having me, Julie.